Vito Genovese rose to power as an enforcer in the American Mafia during Prohibition. As a longtime associate and childhood friend of Lucky Luciano, he took part in the Castellammarese War and would help influence the rise of the Mafia and organized crime in the United States. Later, he would lead Luciano's crime family, which was renamed to the Genovese crime family in his honor. Along with Luciano, Genovese helped the expansion of the heroin trade to an international level. He would later serve as mentor to Vincent Gigante, the future crime boss of the Genovese crime family. Vito Genovese was born in Risigliano, a frazione in the commune of Tofino, in the province of Naples, Italy, on November 21, 1897. Genovese's family immigrated to the United States in 1913 when he was 15 years old and settled in Little Italy, Manhattan. Genovese began his criminal career by robbing pushcart vendors and running errands for mobsters. Later, he collected money from people who participated in illegal lotteries, and at the age of 19, he was imprisoned for a year for the illegal possession of a firearm. By the 1920s, Genovese was working for Joe Masuria, the boss of a powerful Manhattan gang that would eventually become the family he would lead. Lucky Luciano and his close associates began working for gambler Arnold the Brain Rothstein, who recognized the potential windfall from Prohibition and educated Luciano on the business of bootlegging alcohol. With Rothstein's help, Luciano, Frank Costello, and Genovese launched their own bootlegging operation. Genovese allegedly ambushed Gaetano Reina, leader of a Bronx-based gang, as he was leaving his mistress's house in the Bronx and shot him in the back of the head with a shotgun on February 26, 1930, which led to Masuria taking direct control of the Reina gang. Reina had been a Masuria ally until Masuria began to suspect him of secretly assisting his arch-rival, Brooklyn gang leader, Salvatore Maranzano. The Castellammarese War erupted in early 1930 between Masuria and Maranzano. In exchange for receiving Masuria's rackets and becoming Maranzano's second in command, Luciano agreed to engineer the death of his boss, Masuria. Luciano had lured Masuria to a meeting where he was murdered on April 15, 1931, at a restaurant called Nuova Villa Tarmara on Coney Island. In September 1931, Luciano and Genovese planned the murder of Salvatore Maranzano after Luciano received word that Maranzano was planning to kill him and Genovese. But Luciano and Genovese had prepared a hit team to kill Maranzano first. On September 10, 1931, when Maranzano summoned Luciano, Genovese, and Frank Costello to a meeting at his office, Luciano sent to Maranzano's office 4 Jewish gangsters whose faces were unknown to Maranzano's people and who were secured with the aid of Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel. After his first wife died of tuberculosis in 1931, Genovese announced his intention to marry Anna Petiola, who was already married to Gerard Vernautico. He was found strangled to death on a Manhattan rooftop on March 16, and on March 28, 1932, Genovese married his widow, Anna, who was Genovese's cousin through her mother. Genovese allegedly ordered the murder of mobster Ferdinand Baccia in 1934. He and Baccia had planned to defraud a wealthy gambler of $150,000 in a high-stakes card game. Baccia demanded $35,000 after the game because he had introduced the victim to Genovese. Genovese decided to have Baccia murdered rather than pay him anything, so on September 19, 1934, Genovese and 5 associates allegedly shot and killed Baccia in a Brooklyn coffee shop. On June 18, 1936, Luciano was sentenced to 30 to 50 years in prison for pandering, and with Luciano's imprisonment, Genovese took over as acting boss of the Luciano crime family. Genovese became a naturalized U.S. citizen on November 25, 1936, in New York City. He fled to Italy with $750,000 cash in 1937, fearing prosecution for the Baccia murder, and settled in the city of Nola, near Naples. With Genovese's departure, Frank Costello became acting boss. Genovese became friends with Galeazzo Ciano, Benito Mussolini's son-in-law, after bribing some fascist party members, and it is believed Genovese supplied Ciano with cocaine. By the end of World War II, he had donated nearly $4 million to Mussolini's fascist party. He was also awarded the Order of Saints Maurice and Lazarus and made a commendator after assisting in the establishment of a new fascist party headquarters in Nola. Genovese allegedly ordered the murder of Carlo Tresca, the publisher of an anarchist newspaper in New York and a Mussolini enemy, in 1943. Genovese is accused of facilitating the murder as a favor to the Italian government. Tresca was shot and killed outside his newspaper office in Manhattan on January 11, 1943. Carmine Galante, a member of the Bonanno crime family, was later identified as the shooter. No one was ever charged in Tresca's murder. When the Allies invaded Italy in September 1943, Genovese quickly switched sides and offered his services to the U.S. Army. Former New York Governor Charles Poletti accepted a 1938 Packard sedan as a personal gift from Genovese while serving in the U.S. Army. Genovese was then assigned to the U.S. Army headquarters in Naples as an interpreter/liaison officer and quickly rose to become one of the most trusted employees of the Allied Military Government for Occupied Territories, or AMGOT. Poletti and the entire AMGOT department were unaware of his background. Together with the Italian gangster Calogero Vizzini, Genovese established one of the largest black market operations in southern Italy. Vizzini sent truck caravans loaded with all the basic food commodities required for the Italian diet rolling northward to hungry Naples, where Genovese's organization distributed their cargoes. The AMGOT administration in Naples and Sicily issued passes and export papers to all of the trucks, and some corrupt American Army officers even contributed gasoline and trucks to the operation. Genovese was implicated in the Baccia murder by mobster Ernest the Hawk Ruppolo, a former Genovese associate, in the summer of 1944 in New York. Ruppolo had decided to become a government witness in order to avoid a murder conviction. On August 27, 1944, U.S. military police arrested Genovese in Italy as part of an investigation into his involvement in a black market ring. Genovese was discovered to have stolen trucks, flour, and sugar from the army. When Criminal Investigation Division Agent Orange C. Dickey investigated Genovese's background, he discovered that Genovese was a wanted fugitive for the 1934 Baccia killing. However, neither the Army nor the federal government appeared to be interested in pursuing Genovese. Dickey was finally able to make preparations to ship Genovese back to New York for trial after months of frustration, but he was under increasing pressure. Genovese personally offered Dickey $250,000 in exchange for his release, then threatened Dickey when the offer was turned down. Dickey was even advised by his superiors in the military chain of command not to pursue Genovese, but he refused to be dissuaded. Genovese was arraigned on murder charges for the 1934 Baccia killing on June 2, 1945, after arriving in New York by ship the day before and entered a not guilty plea. Jerry Esposito, another prosecution witness, was found shot to death beside a road in Norwood, New Jersey on June 10, 1946. Earlier, another witness, Peter LaTempa, was discovered dead in a protective custody cell. Without anyone to corroborate Ruppolo's testimony, the government's case crumbled, and Genovese's charges were dropped on June 10, 1946. Judge Samuel Leibovitz stated in his decision, "I cannot speak for the jury, but I believe that if there were even a shred of corroborating evidence, you would have been condemned to the chair." Genovese was able to rejoin the Luciano family in New York after his release from custody in 1946. However, neither Costello nor his underboss Willie Moretti were willing to relinquish power to him. Meyer Lansky convened a meeting of the heads of the major crime families in Havana in December 1946, known as the Havana Conference. The heroin trade, Cuban gambling, and what to do about Bugsy Siegel and the struggling Flamingo Hotel project in Las Vegas were the three topics that would be discussed. The conference lasted a little more than a week and was held at the Hotel Nacional de Cuba. During the conference, Luciano had a private meeting with Genovese in Luciano's hotel suite on December 20th. Luciano, unlike Castello, had never trusted Genovese. During the meeting, Genovese attempted to persuade Luciano to become a titular boss of bosses, allowing Genovese to run everything. Luciano politely declined Genovese's suggestion, saying, "There is no boss of bosses. I turned it down in front of everybody. If I ever change my mind, I will take the title, but it won't be up to you. Right now, you work for me and I ain't in the mood to retire. Don't you ever let me hear this again, or I'll lose my temper." Genovese was now the capo of his former Greenwich Village crew, but on October 4, 1951, Moretti was assassinated by order of the Mafia Commission because the mob bosses were dissatisfied with his testimony during the Kefauver hearings and were concerned that, with the syphilis now affecting his brain, he might start talking to the press. Genovese was then appointed as the new underboss by Frank Costello. Anna Genovese sued her husband for financial support in December 1952 and later divorced in 1953, while also testifying to Vito's involvement in criminal rackets, a first by the wife of a mob figure. She had already left the family home in New Jersey 2 years before and requested $350 per week from the judge. Vito countersued the divorce on the grounds of desertion. Vito Genovese, according to Anna, ruled the Italian lottery in New York and New Jersey, bringing in over $1 million per year. However, these claims were dismissed in the New Jersey Superior Court Appellate Division in 1954. Genovese allegedly ordered the murder of mobster Stephen France in 1953. Genovese had tasked France with keeping an eye on Anna while he hid in Italy. Outraged by Anna's potential love affairs and her lawsuit against him, he directed Joseph Valachi to arrange France's murder. Genovese made the decision to go up against Costello in the mid-1950s. He also needed to get rid of Costello's close ally on the commission, Albert Anastasia, the boss of the Anastasia crime family. Genovese was soon plotting with Anastasia's underboss, Carlo Gambino, to have Anastasia killed. Genovese directed Vincent Giganti to murder Costello, who was shot and wounded outside his apartment building on May 2, 1957. Despite the fact that the wound was superficial, it persuaded Costello to cede power to Genovese and retire. A doorman identified Giganti as the gunman, but Costello testified in 1958 that he couldn't identify his assailant and Giganti was acquitted on attempted murder charges. Genovese was now the boss of what is now known as the Genovese crime family, and his longtime lieutenant, Anthony Strollo, was promoted to underboss. Genovese and Gambino allegedly ordered Anastasia's murder in late 1957. Genovese had heard rumors that Costello was plotting to reclaim power with Anastasia. Anastasia went to the Park Central Hotel barbershop in Midtown, Manhattan, on October 25, 1957, for a haircut and shave. Anastasia was relaxing in the barber chair when two men with scarves covering their faces shot and killed him. Witnesses were unable to identify any of the gunmen, and competing theories about their identities persist to this day. Genovese wanted to legitimize his new power by holding a National Cosa Nostra meeting in November 1957, so on November 14th, powerful mafiosi from the United States and Italy gathered at Joseph Barbera's estate in Apalachin, New York. State Trooper Edgar D. Croswell had become aware that Barbera's son was reserving rooms in local hotels as well as having a large quantity of meat delivered to the Barbera home from a local butcher. Croswell became suspicious and therefore decided to keep an eye on Barbera's house. When the state police discovered a large number of luxury cars parked at Barbera's house, they began recording license plate numbers. After discovering that many of these vehicles were registered to known criminals, state police reinforcements arrived on the scene and began erecting a roadblock. When the mobsters became aware of the police presence, they began fleeing the gathering by car and foot. Many mafiosi managed to flee through the woods that surrounded the Barbera estate. The officers pulled over Russell Bufalino's car, which was carrying Genovese and 3 other men. Genovese said he was just there for a barbecue and to discuss business with Barbara, so the police let him go. Genovese testified under subpoena in the U.S. Senate McClellan hearings on organized crime on June 2, 1958. He refused to answer any questions, citing the Fifth Amendment rights under the United States Constitution 150 times. Luciano allegedly assisted in the payment of a portion of $100,000 to a Puerto Rican drug dealer in order to falsely implicate Genovese in a drug deal. On July 7, 1958, he was charged with conspiracy to import and sell narcotics. Nelson Cantellops, a Puerto Rican drug dealer who claimed Genovese met with him, was the government's star witness. Genovese was convicted of conspiracy to violate federal narcotics laws in New York on April 4, 1959, and was sentenced to 15 years in the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary on April 17, where he attempted to run his crime family from prison. Genovese allegedly ordered the murder of Anthony Strollo in April 1962 after concluding that Strollo was involved in the plot that landed him in prison. Strollo left his house on April 8 to go for a walk and was never seen again, and his body was never found. In 1962, an alleged murder threat from Genovese propelled mobster Joseph Valachi into the public spotlight. Valachi supposedly mistook another inmate for a mob hitman out to kill him, so Valachi murdered the inmate instead. After receiving a life sentence for that murder, Valachi then turned government witness. On August 24, 1964, Ernest Rupolo's body was recovered from Jamaica Bay, Queens. His killers had attached 2 concrete blocks to his legs and tied his hands. It was widely assumed that Genovese had ordered Rupolo's murder for testifying against him in 1944. Genovese died of a heart attack at the United States Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri, on February 14, 1969.